I pulled into Birchwater Landing just as the sun fell and saw blue and red lights rippling across the water like bad news, the kind that makes your stomach do a slow roll. A deputy told me to step back from slip C-17, and then my cabin door slid open. The HOA president stepped out in a hotel robe, sipping coffee like she'd just woken up in my bed. She pointed at me and said, "Officer, that man is trespassing on an HOA-secured vessel." And right then, I knew this wasn't some mix-up I could fix with a friendly nod and a set of keys. My name's Cole Mercer, and the boat is the Hannah J, named for my late wife. Her ashes in a little bronze urn, bolted beneath the mast, the place I go when the house gets too quiet, and the world feels 2 sizes too big. I held up my registration and my keyring like an idiot on a first day, but the deputy glanced from my papers to hers and chose the safest path in the world. Call it civil ask everyone to calm down. Escort the guy with the calloused hands back to the parking lot. The woman in the robe handed over a packet labeled Emergency Authority. Bylaw 17C Custodianship. Temporary remediation, a whole bowl of official words with just enough salt to taste legal, and I did what the Navy beat into me. I went colder, not louder, turned on my heel, and left my own dock, while the glow from my cabin lit the inside of a stranger's smile. You want to know what Birchwater was like before Delia Hart showed up with a clipboard and teeth? Think lawn chairs and potlucks, mulch orders, and unheated arguments about mailbox paint then. She canvassed the neighborhood with proxy forms, promising modern landscaping budgets and protecting your property values, and folks signed to get her off the porch. You know what I mean. Overnight, the agenda grew. Clause. A widow told to remove a memorial rock because it was an unapproved ornament. My neighbor Walt fined $500 for excessive paint degradation on one window frame. After winter chewed on it. Letters with due dates. Bold print threats that looked like courtesy reminders. If you squinted, I kept my head down, paid dues, loved my boat, until that robe stepped out of my cabin. That night, I laid the covenants on my kitchen table, read them line by line with a pencil and a pot of coffee. No authority to seize private property. None then in the back, stapled to some weekday special session of minutes. Hardly anyone knew about. I found C, a hallway clause with mushy words like any property that could pose a liability, including watercraft, a magic trick in black and white. I carried my folder to the board meeting. Clean jacket, steady hands. And when resident comments opened, I said it plain. There is no leak. I inspected fuel lines on January 3rd. Bilge is dry. You took my boat with a paper lie, and Delia slid an invoice across the table as soft as a cat. Won $250 for emergency contamination cleanup and vessel securing. Settle it, and we can talk about restoring access. She said, then tapped a gavel and suspended my marina access for concerning behavior next item. The keypad gate went up the very next morning, a chain thick as a wrist wrapped around the marina road. A letter zip tied with my name on it, warning me not to trespass. And that night, a light burned inside my cabin that shouldn't have been there if nobody was home. Then the hits came low. My daughter Hannah, the person not the boat called from Kansas City, whispering that HR had put her on leave after an email from our HOA president reported a family mental health incident and suggested her company keep an eye on her. And I swear to you, I felt something inside me stop and click into a different gear then. My insurance cancellation landed in the same day's mail. Reason listed as misuse by an unauthorized third party, which was true in the most crooked way possible because she was living in my boat and used that truth like a nail to hang me on. I called an old shipyard buddy, Ray Pike, the kind of marine surveyor who can hear a motor and tell you which bolt is rattling, and he said what men like him say. Since when does a lock stop a sailor? And 2 dawns later, Walt punched in the 6-digit gate code his grandson knew from mowing paths. The lock clicked like a seatbelt, and we walked down the dock as quiet as fog. The second I stepped inside, I smelled the cover-up, vanilla air freshener over damp beer, my wife's tea towel stuffed in a drawer with a dog-eared paperback, an HOA mug in the sink with lipstick on the rim, the nav wiring open like someone had tried to bypass the fuse. The solar panel lines cut sticky stains on teak scratches in the varnish beer can swept into the corner, like even the trash was ashamed. And Ray documented it all with timestamps and serial numbers, and the calm voice of a man who has written things that end debates. My tracker logs, yeah, I installed one after a buddy lost an outboard, showed no movement out of the slip for months, but a steady daily power draw, like someone living TV space, heater, microwave, bursts the heartbeat of a squat. We locked up exactly as we found it, and Ray wrote his report at my kitchen table. No evidence of fuel leak, no chemical odor. Bilge, clean abandonment claim. Unfounded, and before lunch, a courier handed me a cease and desist, accusing me of unlawful tampering with HOA-guarded property. The kind of letter designed to make normal people sit down and pay whatever number is circled in the corner just to breathe again. I didn't hire a courtroom lion. I hired a contracts person named Nina Alvarez and asked the only question that mattered. Who does the HOA answer to? And she dove into land records and corporate filings and called me back with the twist that changed the whole story. The HOA doesn't own the marina. Never did. The docks and road belong to the Midlands. Water Conservancy, a regional trust that hates dealing with our board and has been shopping for a clean exit. You know what I mean. Pull the lease and the binder, bully loses the ladder under her feet. That night at the diner, I pitched a cooperative to a few vets and neighbors. Coffee mugs and ketchup bottles between us. Simple numbers. Transparent fees, at cost, no theatrics. Her power isn't the binder, it's the lock. We take the dock, she's just a lady with a clipboard, and the room went that quiet men do when something is obvious and costly and correct, and we put our names down. The credit union manager, her dad served, approved the loan because the plan penciled, and because sometimes people root for a clean fight. The Conservancy accepted our offer in a heartbeat transfer at Monday 8 a.m. And at 8:05, I cut the chain. Hung a small sign that said, Sandbar Point Marina. A resident cooperative, all welcome, and watched Delia fishtail onto the gravel in her slate gray coat to tell me I was banned and destroying HOA property. Your lease ended at 08 Darabura, I said, handing her the termination. You're trespassing now. And you could see the moment she realized the ground had shifted beneath her heels. Neighbors walked past us with toolboxes and thermoses, tied small flags she had banned back onto lines. Didn't even look at her. And when she couldn't control the dock, she tried to control the narrative. A news van, a segment titled, Disgruntled Veteran, Hijacks Community, Marina, the kind of B-roll that makes a regular guy look like a movie villain. If you mute the sound, then an emergency meeting to expel me from the neighborhood outright. Nina just smiled. Charter requires a full membership meeting, and 2/3 make them follow their own rules, and we booked the high school auditorium, and the place filled to the exits. People who hadn't said a word in years, now leaning forward in folding chairs, like they might finally be allowed to speak. Delia did the thing. Property values, safety, regret, a tissue at the corner of her eye. And when she finished, I didn't make a speech. I plugged in a USB and let pictures do what words struggled to her white robe on my captain's chair, next to that HOA mug. The cut solar lines, the bypassed fuse, the beer cans, the scratch in the varnish. Ray's report in big letters. No evidence of fuel leak abandonment claim unfounded. My battery logs with the steady draw of a stranger's evenings in my galley. The invoice for $250 for a cleanup that never happened. And I said one quiet sentence. This was never about safety. It was about a free lake house taken with a stamp and a lie. And that was that. Walt stood on a chair and said, "Vote." The room answered. Back hands went up like a tide. The count wasn't close, 90-something% to remove Delia and her 2 allies immediately, and the interim secretary asked for their keys. Which is where my story ends. The clink of a lanyard on a table, a gavel doing what a gavel is supposed to do. No balloons, no victory. Music, just consequences. I know HOAs aren't all villains. I know volunteers who keep communities tidy without turning into little kingdoms. But I also know what it feels like to be processed instead of heard, to watch someone place a polite label over your life and call it policy. And if you've ever had a boss or a board or a neighbor with a stamp, take something that wasn't theirs, yeah? That happened to me too. So tell me where you draw the line between order and overreach. Tell me if forming the co-op was too far or the only road left. Tell me your story if you've been called difficult when you were just trying to keep your name on your door. Drop a comment. Push back if you want, and if this hit a nerve. Subscribe and share it, not because it makes me rich, but because voices change rooms, and rooms change what happens at the gate.